SIS Certifications is a leading global certification body offering management system certifications, training services to the organization to more than 50 plus countries. Headquartered in Gurgaon, India, SIS Certifications is committed in helping organizations enhance their credibility, improve operational efficiency, and demonstrate compliance with international standards. We are accredited by internationally recognized bodies from USA, that is IAS and UF, which stands for International Accreditation Services and United Accreditation Foundation. We are also exemplar global certified for our training services. Our core services on which we work are ISO Management System certifications, for example ISO 9001, ISO 14001, ISO 45001, ISO 27001, ISO 22000, ISO 13485, ISO 37001 and many more other standards. We also provide training programs for lead auditor, for internal auditor, for lead implementer that is aligned with ISO standards. We also work with compliance and system audits. We support in third-party certifications. SIS Certifications serves a wide range of industries including manufacturing, construction, healthcare, food processing, hospitality, IT, education, logistics, finance and energy. It also supports sectors such as automotive, pharmaceutical, agriculture, real estate and environmental services along with professional services like consultancy, facility management and manpower supply. Government bodies like NGOs, telecommunication and e-commerce companies also rely on SIS certifications for ISO standards that enhances quality, safety, security and operational efficiency across global market. SIS certifications is built on a core value of integrity, impartiality, customer focus, emphasis honest, fair and reliable certifications services. They emphasize competency through continuous learning and enhances innovation to stay current. The company is accountable to protect the confidentiality of the customers and is committed to provide sustainable and responsible business practices. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr.Arunendra Dvivedi, the visionary founder and managing director of SIS Certifications Pvt Ltd, a global leader in ISO certification and training services. Arunendra Dvivedi is a founder and managing director of SIS Certifications Pvt Ltd, a globally recognized certification body providing ISO certifications and training services in over 50 countries. With the strong background of management system standards, business strategy and international accreditation, he has been instrumental in positioning SIS certifications as a trusted name in the field of ISO compliance. His leadership is driven the company's growth and across diverse sectors including government, corporate, healthcare, logistics and education. Spearheaded international expansion through partnerships and joint ventures, by which we have a unit of SIS in Bahrain named SIS Gulf WLL, auditor in ethical business practices and anti-bribery compliance for ISO 37001. He is a regular speaker and contributor in global forums on quality, governance and compliance. Arunendra Dvivedi's vision is to promote a culture of transparency, sustainability and continual improvement across global organizations through effective management system certifications. Let's dive into the training and know more about ISO 37001 by Arunendra Dvivedi.
So I welcome you to the ISO 37001-2016 Anti-Bribery Management System, a webinar which will basically include the awareness session and an overview of what exactly this management system standard talks about. So let us come with a point where management system. Okay, what is the standard, and is this the first standard for anti-bribery management system? Yes, it is the first anti-bribery management system from ISO, that is ISO 37001 2016. Okay, so the first standard which was there, it was from British standards, that was BS 10500 2011 version. Okay, where it was addressed majorly two things which were addressed was bribery by the organization and bribery of the organization. Bribery by the organization is when an organization is involved into into any of the activity which can be termed as bribery, or from the other organization to other organization where the things happen where it can also be considered as a bribery. Bribery is basically nothing but, you can say, it is a perception. Okay, how exactly we need to take this perception into our organization depending on the various size and sectors. We need to know the basic definition of bribery. According to ISO 37001, bribery is termed as offering, promising, giving, accepting, or soliciting an undue advantage of any value, which can be financial or non-financial, directly or indirectly, irrespective of the locations, in violation of applicable law, as an inducement or reward for a person acting or refraining from acting in relation to the performance of his or her duties. Okay, this is the exact definition which is given for the bribery. Moving further, we'll have clause a narration of what exactly the standard requires. Okay, this standard ISO 37001 is again on the same structure, that is high level structure, from where the auditable clauses start from clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where it starts from the context of the organization, the leadership, planning, support, operations, performance evaluations, and improvement. Okay, there are certain additional terminologies used into this ISO 37001 apart from the other generic standards, for example 9001, 14001, or any other 27001 it may be. We'll talk about it in the coming future, in the coming slides. Have the context of the organization. ISO 37001 also talks about the appropriate scope of the certification. The standard wants that you should identify the scope of your certification, the boundary within which you want to implement or audit the standard. This scope needs to be appropriately verified and written based on various factors, for example nature of business, size, decision making authorities, locations, business associates, what exact business associates we are handling with, scale, the nature of the business, what business model do you have, what relations do you have with the public officials, and what are the statutory and regulatory requirements in your organization. Taking into consideration of all these factors, you need to define your scope where which you will be implementing or auditing the organization. So first of all, we need to have the needs and expectations of the stakeholders. Like any other standard, ISO 9001, 14001, or any other generic standards where you talk about the needs and expectations of the stakeholders. Only the thing is, we need to make sure that the context we're talking about here is ISO 37001, that is anti-bribery management system. Whenever you identify the needs or expectations or both, okay, you need to focus upon the areas, the expectations or the needs your stakeholder can have in terms of the needs and in terms of anti-bribery management system. Okay. Of course, yes, again, the scope, the determining the scope of the ABMS. Okay. Majorly when you define the scope, we have discussed this thing. So if you actually consider all these things, you will land at a place where they will talk about the issues that the organization can have. Okay, how exactly you are going to make sure, what all things are you going to cover into your management system. Defining for ABMS, okay, you need to consider the external and internal issues, the requirements which of the interested parties, the needs and expectations, the result of the risk assessment, the higher the risk in your organization is, your system needs to be stronger. Okay, if your organization is into such a business, such as such an area or such a location where the probability of bribe, okay, is high, okay, or if you go to any of the country where you have your country as top in the bribe rate, okay, or you can say corruption rate, the corruption index, if you see. Okay, so from there you will get to know uh, how the anti-bribery scope can actually have major impact on your system. Okay. So for an anti-bribery management system or any of the management system standard, is my PPT visible? Can any? Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so the anti-bribery management system. Okay, you need to establish and review the management system that you are developing. Okay, you need to establish and document and review when you implement the system in your organization. The continuous implementation, the continuous review, and continuous documentation for the gaps that you identify in your system needs to be continually improved upon to make sure that your documented system grows. Okay, you need to measure the design. The system should be in such a way where the risks that are identified, those are taken into consideration when you design and implement your system. Okay, the system should be designed in such a way where it is able to prevent, detect, and respond to the bribery. Okay, so your anti-bribery management system should cover the documentation, the risk assessment, and the complete measures to prevent, detect, and respond to the anti-bribery, to the bribery. To perform the bribery risk assessment, whenever you identify, okay, any risk or all the risks that you identify in complete your system, okay, you need to make sure that all these risks are analyzed, assessed, and we see what are the potential impact it can have on your system. Okay, you will have to evaluate the suitability of your risks that you have identified according to your business. Okay, and you need to continually review the bribery assessment, the risk assessment that you do, to make sure that the risks that were there, okay, they have been controlled upon and your risk has gone down. Okay, so you need to continually review and make sure that the controls that you have placed to make sure that the risk does not have a major impact on the system, okay, should be continually reviewed. When we talk a bit of change in this clause comes with a governing body. Okay, in this, the governing body is a group or body that has the ultimate responsibility and authority for an organization's activities, the governance and policies to which the top management reports. The top management reports to the governing body. Okay, it is the top. When we talk about anti-bribery, so you need to have a governing body who is going to report, who is going to have the complete responsibility of the management system of the anti-bribery management system. Okay, then it comes to top management. Okay, all the policies, all the procedures, okay, the review, the resources, how exactly the system is getting implemented in the organization, how exactly the competency of the people which are into the anti-bribery team, okay, it is being taken care of. This everything is with governing body. Okay, the top management makes sure that all the policies, all the procedures that are being developed for this anti-bribery management system, okay, it is implemented. Okay. The major role of of the top management is to promote the anti-bribery culture in the organization. Okay, and whistleblower, we will read and we will talk about the whistleblowing system. Okay, the major responsibility of the top management is to make sure that he promotes, they encourage the whistleblowing policy. because it is the people in the organization who always comes to know that is there any anti-bribery practices, okay, happening, or anything which is happening which is against the policies and the procedures. Okay, so these people should be made aware, encouraged, okay, for the reporting of these things. So this is being done by the top management. So government body, ABMS, top management, complete organization. This is how exactly we can know it. Then of course the policy. When you talk about any of the management system standard, okay, the policy is the mandatory part. You need to have the policy because the complete system is drawn from the policy. So we need to have the anti-bribery policy, which of course, yes, aligns with the standard and the regulatory requirements, the laws which are there in the in the region, okay, and make sure that this policy is being communicated to all the relevant interested parties. Okay, here you have to identify all the relevant interested parties, which was discussed in the clause number 4, where it talks about the identification of the interested parties, internal and external. The clause number 4, it always talks about these needs and expectations of the stakeholders, where when you talk about stakeholders, they are basically the interested parties, you can say. Roles and responsibilities, of course, it needs to be defined. Okay, so majorly the organizational roles and responsibilities or authorities are defined into two regions here. One is the top management, okay, who's the overall responsibility, who holds the overall responsibility for the anti-bribery management system, okay, and the other managers, the lower people who regularly review and implement at relevant levels, and the governing body. These are the three major areas which needs to be covered. Okay, then we should also have a compliance function, anti-bribery compliance function, which will work under the governing body. Okay, they will work under the governing body. The governing body will tell what all policies to be implemented, and they should know, and the top management will make sure that all the documentations and everything is being done through this function. Okay, the top management will also have to have some function, some compliance function, with to whom there will be a single reporting, who will be held responsible for any of the non-compliance. Okay, then it is the delegate decision making. So delegate decision making, when we identify the risk. Okay, so decision making, what exactly decision making is? To take the decision, or the authority. Decision is an authority. Okay, now if the top management wants to delegate any of the decision making to any of the employees or any of the role in the organization, they will have to make sure that any risk which was onto a higher level, okay, so in that portion there should be a proper defined process and procedures. If we read here, delegating decisions where risk level is low, ensuring delegation is free from conflict of interest. There should be no conflict of interest. Okay, if the decision on the financial matters or the non-financial matters is given to a person who is involved in the project, and the decision for that project is being given, that is basically a conflict of interest. Okay, that person should not be involved with any of the functions, any of the related things which can have a problem of conflict of interest. The documentation of the proper procedure in the case of decision making responsibility is allocated for more than low risk bribery. If it is a less than a low risk, okay, yes, of course it can be delegated. But if it is more than low risk of bribery, the documentation has to be there. A proper system needs to be documented, where the proper policy and procedure in terms of the delegation of the decision makings needs to be there. Now when you talk about planning, okay, so planning, of course, the risk and opportunities. You identify all the risks which can be a problem for the organization, the opportunities in your organization which you can enhance more and take it into a proper consideration, where your organization will have the proper path of growth. Okay, so risks need to be identified to make sure that the objectives of ABMS, the objectives of anti-bribery management system is achieved. Okay, there is a continual improvement in the system. they prevent or reduce the negative effects related to the bribery. Overall, the risk that you identify should be in such a way that your organization, when the control is put on the risks, okay, those controls should be such a way that it benefits the organization. Okay. And the opportunities, it's not important that you get someone from the outside. For example, an organization needs a person who can take care of the ABMS. Okay, there are two options. One, you post the query, you post the job, okay, and you get a person from outside, okay, and start working with him. The another option is you identify the people in your organization, you see who can be given the responsibility, delegate him the responsibility slowly so that he can adjust to the requirements, to the new responsibilities which are given to him. Okay, and there will be a time where you will see that that person who knows the organization, who knows the system, who has been into your system, has to be properly utilized. Okay, and from there your system will grow to a better side. So this is one of the opportunities. There can be multiple opportunities, there can be multiple risks to which, if taken care, the organization can grow. Of course, the reference of these risk and opportunity needs to be taken from clause number 4.1, which talks about the needs and expectations, clause number 4.2 and clause number 4.5, which talks the risk assessment. When we talk about support, okay, so basically support, if you see the general requirements, okay, if you we need to identify the roles affecting the anti-bribery management system. Okay, we need to see that a proper system, a proper knowledge is given to the organization. Competence, okay, when we talk about the competence, okay, the people in the organization, they should be well utilized, because we were coming to the next to the slide was competence. Okay, we need to make sure that any people in the organization, all the people rather in the organization, should be well competent, well aware of the anti-bribery management system, the policies, the procedures, the system. Okay, whatever are there, the requirements are there in terms of ABMS 37001. Okay, the people in the organization should be well aware of. Okay, depending on the roles, depending on the responsibilities they are given of, okay, their skills, their competency needs to be improved on timely basis. You should have a proper employment process as per the requirement of the standard. If you see, okay, I'll zoom a bit. Okay, ensure all employees are aware of anti-bribery policies and trained on them. Provide anti-bribery policy before employment starts. You need to give them the anti-bribery policy, anti-bribery policy before you give them the offer letter. Okay, before you give them the or at the time of offer letter, okay, you can give them the anti-bribery policy where you say, boss, this is our anti-bribery policy, this is what needs to be followed. If you are okay and if you accept this, please accept the offer letter and please send it back to us. Okay, take disciplinary action if someone violates the policy. It is the requirement of the standard. You will see, we will talk about it later. Okay, you will see that it is the requirement of the standard to have the disciplinary action if someone violates the policy. Protect from retaliation. So when we talk about the whistleblowing policy, okay, there will be people in the organization who can report to the top management or to any of the relevant function where they see there is an anti-bribery act, or sorry, there is a bribery act, okay. In that case, we need to make sure, the organization needs to make sure, okay, that there is no negative impact on those people. They should not be fired, they should not be demotion, they should not be harassment. Okay, encourage reporting of bribery without fear. Conduct due diligence before employment or transfers for higher risk position. We need to perform the due diligence before the employment, and even if there is a promotion. Okay, check compliance with anti-bribery policies and monitor incentive programs to prevent bribery risk. You can have an incentive program. where you say if there is some reporting done by person, okay, so you should have an incentive for it. You should have an appreciation. In awareness and training, like any other management system standard, okay, the organization should make sure that all their people are aware of the policies, of the procedures according to their roles and responsibilities. A proper training should be given to them, and a proper record needs to be maintained. Okay, the training calendar, the training record, the competence, how exactly the competency is going to increase, how the skill is going to increase, the evaluation of the people. What exactly are you doing with those people who are scoring less than the passing marks? Okay, how exactly are you training them? Are you going to change any methodology in training? Okay, or are you going to give them a special lecture or a special thorough or inside lecture, okay, on the topic? So we need to have this awareness and training in the organization. It has to be a communication matrix where we talk about what will be the topic of communication, when it will be communicated, with whom to communicate, how to communicate, who will communicate, and the languages. The languages, this portion, the language in which it will be communicated, it is a specific requirement of 37001. You will not see in any other standard where they talk about the language. Complete documentation structure, okay. The anti-bribery system must include the documentation as per 37001 or any other documentation or any other document that the organization deems necessary. While creating or updating, you need to make sure that there is a proper identification, the proper title, date, author, review, how exactly what is the media, the approval process, the review process, everything needs to be documented and controlled. The control of documents is very much important as any other standard. However, this is a bit critical because the documents that will be controlled will be having some financial data. Because when we talk about anti-bribery, it is tall terms in financial and non-financial. Okay, so when we talk about financial, it will have the data which will be like the financial data. So the control of documents in this system needs to be made very strong. Okay. The segregation of the documentation, the level of the documentation need to be defined and maintained to make sure that the person should not get any document which is not for him. As you see, it is mentioned, availability and suitability when needed. Protection from misuse, loss, or tampering. Okay. It is very important that documentation that is made should be accessible and distributed accordingly. The storage and legibility, the version control, the retention, the disposal. As I told you, the documentations will have some very critical information. So the retention of the documentations and disposal has to be taken care in a very, very, very strong manner. The standard ISO 27001, when we talk about ISO 27001 ISMS, Information Security Management System. Okay. The controls, you have to make sure that the controls are very strong in terms of IT and non-IT. The information security needs to be maintained. Okay. If any organization, they already have 27001 and then they want to go with 37001, this portion will be well taken care of from the controls of the documentations, control of the information that is being handled through the controls in 27001. Operations. So majorly any standard when you talk, okay, it due diligence. All the other standards, if you see, all the other clauses, okay, you will see the common practice. The context of the organization, needs and expectations, issues, leadership, roles and responsibility, training. So all these things are very generic. So when we talk about this standard, okay, the clause number 8, the due diligence. So this operational control, the clause number 8, it is going to cover the due diligence, the financial and non-financial controls, the anti-bribery controls for controlled entities and business associates, anti-bribery commitments, control of anti-bribery commitments, due diligence, controls of gifts, hospitality, donations, and similar benefits, managing inadequate anti-bribery controls, raising concerns, that is whistleblowing, we'll be talking about whistleblowing here, and investigating and dealing with bribery. These are the major topics for 37,001 diligence. Okay, so due diligence is the requirement. Okay, due diligence, if due diligence is not done, okay, it will be considered into a high bribery risk. Okay, the due diligence needs to be done on specific transactions, projects, or activities. You need to identify, okay, the specific projects. If it involves a lot of public and a lot of financial transactions, okay, majorly when it is into consulting, okay, consulting is considered as to be into the high bribery risk industry. Okay, the projects, okay, activities or the activities, okay, the specific business associate relationships, what sort of business associates the organization has, okay, and certain personal in high risk roles, the roles are also being taken care of. So we need to make sure that the due diligence is done for all the functions which are into the high risk roles. So we need to perform the due diligence for all these specific transactions, projects, or activities. Okay, the specific business associate relationships that we have, the certain personal in high risk roles and non-financial controls. Okay, we need to identify what all are the financial controls. We need to identify which all are the non-financial controls. We need to make sure that the segregation of duties is done, a proper authorization process is done, a transparent record making, okay, monitoring and auditing, and due diligence on the financial transaction. Any financial transaction that is happening, we need to make sure that a proper due diligence is done. So, for example, if you want to give a gift, okay, to your employees, to your people, to your associates, okay, you need to define a proper structured financial value up to which amount you can give the gift. Okay, an organization, okay, if they move ahead and if they give a 5,000 rupees gift, okay, to someone, okay, it will depend the size and type and nature of the organization. Okay, and also if they take any gift, it will depend on type and size and nature of the organization. As I mentioned, it is basically a perception. So perception will change as the type and size of the organization changes. So we need to have a policy of, do we accept the gifts? If we accept, what is the level that we will accept? Okay, we will have to make sure that every value is properly defined. In non-financial controls, the code of conduct and anti-bribery policy needs to be made aware. The conflict of interest needs to be taken care of. The due diligence on personal and business associates needs to be there. The human resource controls, we have to make sure that the human resource controls are made out in proper controls for controlled entities and business associate. What are controlled entities? Any organization that you have control upon them. If the management in your organization, okay, if they hold different organization which is being majorly controlled by the organization to where the owner is same, okay, you have to make sure that there are anti-bribery controls for that organization also, related organization. And business associates, you need to make sure that the anti-bribery policy, the anti-bribery system is well aware and implemented for the controlled organization as well as the business associate. I'll just go through it. If you control another organization, make them adopt your anti-bribery system or ensure they have their own adequate controls based on a risk-based approach only as much as needed depending on the bribery risk. Okay, you need to make sure that the risk is also taken care of. This exercise should be on a risk-based approach. For the business associates, when dealing with vendors or partners, you don't control. You don't have any control on your business associates. They are not controlled. If risk is more than low, check if they have anti-bribery controls. You have to make sure that if their risk is high, okay, they need to have the anti-bribery controls. Why does the customer, okay, they want the organizations to get ISO 37001? Okay, all those big organizations, okay, so these organizations, the big organizations, the government organizations, okay, they come up with a requirement of anti-bribery because in their system, okay, all the associates from where the transaction happens fall into the high category. So check if they have anti-bribery controls. If not, if they do not have, ask them to implement controls if feasible. If not feasible, factor that into your risk evaluation and take precautions. So for business associate, there is a proper system given. There is a proper there is a proper requirement given, as well as you can have a control on your business associate. Okay, if they do not if they are not ready to do this what you want, you need to take care of through your risk evaluation and the precautions that you need to take care of. The anti-bribery commitments, where now all the places where when you talk about the business associate, where they are not ready to implement, where they are not ready to go for the proper documentation and implementation of the standard, you need to evaluate and you need to take it into your risk evaluation and process. For that, we need to take commitments, anti-bribery commitments. Get a commitment from business associate to prevent bribery, whether it's by them, on their behalf, or for their benefit. Okay, there should be a straightforward thing where you need to make sure that the bribery is not there. Ensure the right to terminate. Let them know if they do not follow their commitment, okay, we can terminate the relations. And this is the requirement of the standard you need to have in your system. If these can't be enforced, factor it into the risk assessment and manage it accordingly. Then controls of anti-bribery commitments. Now if someone comes and they say, okay, I will make sure that there will be no system bypassed, we will always follow the system. We need to have the control on those commitments. Ensure contracts and agreements include anti-bribery commitments. Put it into your agreements. Put it into your contracts. Regularize, require compliance with the organization's anti-bribery policy. Terminate or take action if associate fail to comply. We have to take the some step. If there has to be a record of if there was any fail to comply and what action have you taken. So this has to be documented. Uh, when we talk about legal and statutory requirements, okay, now in few countries allowed, even though their laws do not permit it. Okay, so in any case, if the laws permits, rather their laws permits, sorry, their laws permits, okay, and it is allowed. If any organization is into ISO 37001 system, this standard will overpass the laws. Facilitation is not going to be a compliance function even if it is mentioned into the laws. Controls of gifts, hospitality, donation, and similar benefits. Okay, so as mentioned, you need to make sure that you define your system. You define how exactly you are going to prevent the gifts, hospitality, and donations from being used as cover for bribery. Define permitted and non-permitted actions. What are the permitted and what are the non-permitted actions? Establish a proper procedure for recording, reviewing, and approving transactions. Okay, so any gifts that you get, you need to define in your system. Okay, we need to define the system what all gifts you can take. What is the level of hospitality? Now there is an organization, if someone comes, for example, an authority comes for the verification, okay, and you ask them to stay in a proper good well hotel, organize a 7-star hotel filled with all the facilities, okay, you take them to different places, you take them to Taj Mahal, you take them to different places for roaming around, okay, so that is also considered to be the bribery. Okay. The donations, the donations which are being given in the NGOs, the non-government organizations, donations are considered to be one of the biggest problem, or I would rather not say problem, but a very big source of going for this anti-bribery. The organizations, they put their money into the NGO, and from there they can get from the back end in cash or kind. There can be anything or any similar benefits. A consultant, okay, so I'll give an example. An organization, okay, who wants to apply for a tender, okay, and to apply for this tender, they hire a consultant who has a good connect in that organization where the tender needs to be submitted. They fix up a fees. The consultant goes to the organization where to the organization from where the tender was released, take them to the lavish places, arranges the a good travel, a good stay for the family, okay, and they say, okay, let's go there, we will have the meeting and we will talk about the business there, okay. That is also considered to be the bribe, and this amount which was there is being raised in an invoice to the organization, okay, to the client, where they mention as the service fee, okay. The organization who is implementing the system in the organization needs to make sure that all the travels, all the stay, what all can be given to the customers, what all can be given to the employees, what all can be given to the business associate, okay, as a gift. If the organization, if there is a legal department coming, where will they help them to stay? Are they going to give any leverage on the hospitality? The organization should have a proper procedure of donations, okay. How exactly do they calculate the donations to be given, or any financial or non-financial transactions that are going to be there needs to be taken care of. Managing inadequate anti-bribery controls for existing transactions. So when we sign an associate, when we sign an agreement or a business with the associate, you can, or the organization can come at a point, okay, where they see that the anti-bribery policies are not being met. The controls, if you see, the controls are not up to date. So what exactly you need to do? Anti-bribery controls for any of the existing transactions, okay. Terminate, suspend, or withdraw as soon as possible, okay. You need to intimate to your associate that, boss, this is the commitments that you had, okay, and what I am saying is you are not complying with the requirements that was mentioned into the agreement. We would terminate, suspend, or withdraw as soon as practicable, okay. If you see there is a huge amount pending, if you see there are some transactions which can lead your organization into loss, okay, so you need to make sure that the controls that are there, the factors because of which you have come to know that there is an inadequacy, okay, you need to have an eye on it. Take the transaction to a level where it is practicable and it is okay to terminate or withdraw or suspend the transaction. For any new transaction which is coming with the client with whom you have signed the agreement, or the associate with whom you have signed the agreement, there can be few existing business, few new businesses, okay. For the coming businesses, for the new businesses, of course, you need to postpone or decline to proceed. You need to give a proper information to the organization where you tell them these are the gaps. If they agree to close these gaps, if they say, okay, boss, I got the point, I will close all these gaps and the next transaction will be done. Let's continue in this transaction. Okay, you say, okay, but you will put your own terms and things where you say these all needs to be followed, okay, then we will extend or we will take the existing transaction further. For any new transaction, you will say we will postpone it, or if the associate says no, this is how we work, this is how exactly we are going to take it further, you need to decline the new transaction. Majorly, the key message for this control is, if you can't manage the bribery risk, don't move forward. The standard says do not move forward, do not accept the business, okay, if you see it is, if you see you cannot manage the bribery risk. This is one of the most critical area where, when it comes to the business, when it comes to the financials, okay, the organizations, it becomes a very difficult task or a very difficult challenge for them okay, to suspend the project or to say no to a business. But if you are entering into a system where you say we do not accept bribe, we do not give bribe, and if you want to, it's basically an ethical standard. Okay, it is an ethics. Okay, if you actually want to give something to the industry, if you actually want to give something to the your uh, uh, country, okay, of course you will have to, if you and if religiously you are going to follow ISO 37001 or audit 37001 or implement ISO 37001 in your organization or on behalf of any of the certification body, okay, you need to make sure that you comply with all the requirements. Okay, so as we mentioned, the concerns which are there, okay, the concerns, so when an organization is moving ahead, there can be some anti-bribery activities as mentioned before. Okay. There has to be people, there has to be a group of people who are going to inform the top management or the compliance function, okay, where they report these things. Okay, it is known as the whistleblowing. So the organization should have a proper mechanism for confidentiality. A person who is going and delivering it to the top authority, it should not be disclosed from whom it came out. You have to protect individuals reporting in good faith. Your organization, it is the organization who needs to make sure that the individuals who are protecting, who are reporting these things in the organization, they need to be protected. Evaluate and address reported concerns appropriately. The concerns which have been raised, the whistleblowing, they need to be properly evaluated. And if you see, yes, there is a problem, you need to take the correct action. One major point also, we should not, or the organization should give open benefit any extra open benefit, okay, to any of the person who is into the whistleblowing system. Okay, or for example, if a person who is continuously whistleblowing, who is continuously raising the concerns, okay, the management should not consider this as one of the major thing and should not look at other performances. If the organization is not looking at other points in evaluating the performance of the candidate just because of this one system, okay, and if they are going to promote them, okay, it is going to be a bribery. Bribery by the organization, bribery of the organization. Okay, so bribery by the organization to the employee. So that is an undue advantage. The undue advantage should not be given. So, whenever there is a case of bribery, to be properly investigated and dealt. A bribery which happens or the whistleblowing, the concerns that you have received may not be true. Okay, it may be out of some other functions. It may be a confusion. Okay, a person sees one person taking out the cash and giving to someone else. Okay, it can be a bribery, it can be a payback. Okay, so an investigating should be done. Investigation is important. Once you investigate, then you need to give the proper actions. Okay, investigate the suspected bribery, take appropriate actions including disciplinary, legal steps and corrective actions. If you see there is any positive in the investigation, okay, yes, you need to take the actions. Performance evaluation, again, the complete thing, as it is always mentioned into the other standards as well, clause number 9. Okay, measure and do the analysis and evaluation of the complete system in a timely manner. Internal audit, you need to identify the purpose of internal audit. We need to have a proper planning when we conduct the audits. We need to make sure that what is the focus of audit. Okay, the focus of our audit needs to be on a proper risk based system that is being implemented in the organization. Okay, let's go through it. Purpose of internal audit: planned intervals for checking ABMS meet internal requirements and ISO 37001 standard, effective implementation and maintenance. This is the purpose of the internal audit. Okay, we need to make sure that the organization is complying with the requirements of the standard, and a person in the organization or an expert from the from outside needs to be there, okay, and check each and every clause, each and every requirement of the standard, and should see the compliance. The person or should not do an audit for his own department. The planning needs to be done. A proper audit plan needs to be prepared. The criteria, the audit criteria needs to be there. Okay. The scope needs to be defined. Okay. The competent and independent auditors should be there. The reports should be maintained. The focus of the audit should be always on risk-based and proportionate basis. We need to, when we focus on the audits, we need to see that what all areas have been identified, the controls which have been placed in the risk assessment. Okay, these controls needs to be taken care of. What are the actions, what are the objectives in the organization? The objectives should be taken care of, because these objectives will come from the risk assessment that has been done. Risk assessment means the organization has identified few areas which needs improvement, and objectives are made for the improvement. Ensuring objectivity and independence, maintain audit impartiality, independent function, or designated internal auditor, anti-bribery compliance team. Meeting. The management review agenda points, they are mentioned in the standard. Okay, all those agenda points need to be discussed among the top management. Okay, and what all requirements, what all gaps, what all improvement needs to be there, needs to be documented. The outcomes of that meeting needs to be properly documented and needs to be updated on the policies, objectives, controls, and procedures. Okay, all these things needs to be updated relevantly in line with the outcomes that have been received from the meeting. We need to make sure that the outcomes which were there previously in the previous management review meeting, okay, those also needs to be considered. We need to see what is the level of those outcomes, what is the level of those requirements which were raised in the previous meeting. And corrective action, you need to identify and respond to non-conformities. Okay, control and correct non-conformities. Okay, so any non-conformity in the organization you received, that non-conformity is not mandatorily to be received in the internal audit. It can also be received during the regular working in the organization. There can be gaps which can be identified, which can be seen. Yes, if this was there in the system, it would have been better. So all these gaps, all these non-conformities, all these suggestions needs to be conciled at one place, and the action on all the non-conformities needs to be taken care. Okay. The corrective action needs to be implied, and all these non-conformities needs to be analyzed and taken into consideration. Where can they be put as a risk in the system? Because these non-conformities today, maybe the non-conformity will not arise again, but if the control is removed, it can be again a gap. So the control, if removed, can also be a gap, and it is also a risk. So this needs to be taken into the risk as well. Of course, yes, the whenever you, so PDCA, every standard talks about PDCA, plan, do, check, act. Okay, in plan, okay, it comes as clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So clause number 4 is context of the organization, clause number 5 is leadership, clause number 6 is planning, clause number 7 is support. This all comes into the plan. You plan how to do the process. Okay, when we talk about clause number 8, it comes as the operations, where you perform the operation. Okay, clause number 9, it comes as the check, and clause number 10 comes as the improvement. Okay, what you need to act upon it. So the improvement that you make is basically an act. So we need to follow the PDCA cycle, where you see that yes, the activities have been planned, executed, checked, and We have taken the action. Now when you take the action, now you have to move the system according to the new system that have been developed, the revised system that have been developed. So we need to always continually improve the sustainability and the suitability of the ABMS. We need to utilize the proper feedbacks from the audits, monitoring, reviews, and performance data. So this is what exactly this standard talks about. Anti-bribery management system, as I told you, it is all about a perception. Okay, if you see all these points, so normally if you see, we all know these points, we all understand these are very general and layman things. Okay, performing the due diligence, if you follow ISO 37301, okay, so there you will see it talks about governance, where you have to do the due diligence. Of course, everyone knows the impact of financial bribery and non-financial bribery, right? Of course, yes, if two entities are connected together, okay, there can be an impact. The business associates, okay, we always sign the agreement and we ask them, any organization who is trying to work into a proper ethics, okay, they will inform their associates, boss, we need to make sure that we work ethically, we will not do anything which is wrong. Okay, now as per this standard, we need to focus on the bribery part. We need to document it. The controls on the anti-briberies, okay, the controls on the gifts, inadequacy. Yes, I completely understand. Okay, 100% things understanding in one session is a bit difficult. Of course, we will be coming out with a bigger picture, okay, for the trainings. And also, this is basically, once you read the standard, you will be able to relate your own system according to the standard. Now when you know this is the standard, this is the requirement, this is the overview, what exactly the standard demands, what exactly the standard wants, okay, you will understand it more appropriately. Okay, now implementation is okay. The major problem comes when it comes to the certifications. Okay, when we talk about certifications, okay, so we need to make sure that our system is well defined and documented to apply for the certification, because as per the requirement of the standard, as per the requirement of the accreditation standards, okay, it is important that you go through the right channel. The organizations like IAF, ISO, they themselves are taking a lot of action, okay, where they have come up with a point where the all these standards, okay, should be under IAF. If you are accredited by an organized, if you're an accredited certification body, your name should be there on the IAS portal, sorry, IAF portal, and any certificate which is issued has to be there into the IAF portal, iafsearch.org. Even if the standard is not endorsed by IAF, still IAF allows to put it there and show it to make sure that we talk about a proper implemented and documented system. The process of certification is most important for the certification body. There can be a lot of people into this webinar where they will understand the requirements of the standard, the requirements of the compliance as per these requirements of ISO/IC 17021-1. As per this requirement, the certification body will do the stage 1 audit. Okay, stage 1 is basically the documentation review and making sure that the scope that has been defined by your organization is well and up to date and aligns with the requirements and your organization. Okay, once that is done, then the stage 2 audit is done. Stage 2 is basically the proper view, proper audit of the system to make sure that implementation of the system in the organization is done. Okay, the auditors which audit the system should be well aware of the briberies, the different ways of bribe. Okay, the time is less, okay, but I will send you one book which is basically how to bribe. Okay, we have this book, okay, it is basically how to bribe. It contains a lot of information, a lot of ways in which the bribe is given. Okay, please share your name, your email ID, okay, at the end of this session, so that we can send you this book, we can send you this copy and this presentation, where you will be able to go through what all bribing can be. Okay, once the stage 2 audit is done, then you move ahead with the issuance of the certification. So majorly the certification process starts with an application form, the review of the application form, stage 1 audit, stage 2 audit, and issuance of the certification, and of course the surveillance activities, surveillance 1 and surveillance 2. As per the requirement of ISO/IEC 17021-1, the requirement says there has to be a proper monitoring of the organization, of the certified organization, between two audits, between two consecutive audit. Means we have to continually monitor and continually review the status of the organization, any new complaints they have received, any new whistleblowing they have received. Okay, all these things needs to be properly monitored and made sure that the certification body is well aware of what is happening. And this is the requirement of ISO/IEC 17021-1. Okay, so this is basically the overview of the standard of the certification system. Of course, we as an SIS certifications, we are accredited by IAS, International Accreditation Services, for ISO 37001 2016. There is a big change where we come up with a new standard. 37001 is 2025 version. This standard has been released. Okay, but please don't think that you have gone through the older standard, the older version. In 1 hour, 1.5 hours, you cannot understand the complete requirements on the standard. Okay, this was an overview of the standard, overview of the requirements of ISO 37001 2016. There is no major difference between 37001 and 2016 when you talk about the principles, when you talk about the base. Okay, ISO 37000-2025 improves on 37001-2016 by providing greater clarity, modern risk-based principles, enhanced guidance on implementation, and better alignment with evolving global compliance expectations. Okay, means it is more aligned towards ISO 37301, the standard that I mentioned few minutes back, ISO 37301, which is compliance management system. Okay, so this compliance majorly concentrates on all those factors which are compliance into the legal, the laws. Okay, so there will be a connection between these. But as per the ISO 37025, the basic concept of the standard remains same compared to the 37000 2016 version. Okay, so if you read 2016 version or you read 2025 version, you will understand both these standards with the help of this basic overview of the standard. So we have finished a bit early, right? So if there are any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. Okay, we'll have a question answer for session of 15 minutes. And in the meanwhile, if there is anything that you want to share, you can please put them into the chat box, and Miss Anjali would narrate the name or the question that is there, and I will be the one who will be answering it. Thank you so much.